We're a small company and we've stayed that way on purpose so that we can just do things that we want as opposed to have to make, do a lot of high volume material just to keep everyone employed. I've been working between Granada and the BBC for quite a few years, and I've worked on some amazing programmes, but I could see that if I was going to continue to make the drama that I wanted to make exactly, I had to take some sort of control. And I was very lucky at the time because the people who were in charge at Channel 4 and the BBC were people I'd worked with in the past, so it seemed like the right opportunity. And I had no ties, and it was easy to set up a company. It was as easy as getting a name and then sitting in my bedroom and doing the work. I mean, that's all it was.
Can you describe to us, is there a typical Red production?
No, I don't think there is, because I think the content can be anything you can see. It can be high comedy or it could be The Second Coming. But I think what they all have in common, or what I'd like them all to have in common, is originality of voice, a very strong writer's voice at the core, something to say, because otherwise I just don't see the point really. Even if it's pure comedy, I think you need to have some point to it. And humour, however dark the subject matter gets as well. You saw on there Flesh and Blood, which we did, which was about a man who finds out both his parents he's adopted, and he finds both his birth parents had mental disabilities, and it just sounds like it could be very grim and gruesome. Actually, there's a lot of warmth and humour in it.
Started working for Watchdog at the BBC, and I didn't know yet at that point what I wanted to do in television. And then I realised I wanted to work in drama, so I moved up to researching, and then I could easily move over to drama as a researcher. And it was only when I started as research in drama that I realised that it was the script side rather than the production side that interested me the most. And so then I concentrated on getting into sort of script editing, and I was incredibly lucky to have met a very nice, important person who then got me the job on Bodies to script edit, and that was my first job, script editing. And so that's how I sort of knew at that point what I wanted to do, and that's how I moved into it.
In the beginning, 10 years ago, there were only 4 people or 3 people virtually you could talk to, and I knew them all, or they all wanted to know me. So it was very straightforward, and you'd get a script and you'd think, well, that's for this channel, this channel, this channel, and there was 3 channels that could go on, occasionally BBC 2, and then you would, go and talk to the people in charge. There's a lot more levels now, that's the thing is, but it's still very straightforward. We are still a company that means as soon as we get a script, we can phone up the top people and say, we've got this script, are you interested? Or we'll email them, or however it is, and we'll get an answer relatively quickly, which isn't quickly, but it is in television terms.
I think something that Skins, as we mentioned before, has done incredibly well with is bringing in writers, that haven't necessarily got that experience, and having them either shadow on scripts, or they also on Skinstar write some of the internet scenes, so they get that experience. And I think that's something that we'll definitely be thinking about when we're working on series.
But it's always worth sending you material, because we will always read it, and it's very rare that we'll say, like I said, I think it's only this one time, that script is something we want to make. But what we do is we look at it and we go, there is something about that writer, and either we'll sit there and go, they'll work really well on that series, so we just list their name, or they'll work really well on a comedy, or we should meet them and see what other ideas they've got and tell them, encourage them in the right direction. An American audience is only when you're thinking about selling it on, but that's after. I think you've got to absolutely, everything you do should be about making the best idea, making it as good as it can be, and then it'll have massive international influence. But you don't make something in advance and think the Americans won't understand the word.
But at which point do you? But at which point do you think about audiences?
I think the nicest thing that I find working at Red and working with Nicola is that the big question is, do you like it? And
you the writer, you mean?
You the reader. Yeah. And I think that when I'm writing my notes and I'm sort of conveying what I think about it, I'm saying it as an audience. I think this and I think that. So I don't think we'd ever really. I think it's quite dangerous if you do that. I think you end up making something. I think it's patronising for a start, because you're predicting what other people's views are, and you don't know. And it's the whole thing about 16 to 34-year-olds or whatever. I liked a load of different things when I was 16 to 34, the person next door to me. So you've just got to make things that you think are absolutely as best they can be. What we don't think about is the audience, but we think about the broadcasters, and they're thinking about the audience. So in that way, we do have to fit into those different age demographics and everything. I do think television is slightly in crisis, and I think it's mainly about money. Which is because there's so little money, or less money, than there was
in television drama. So decisions are having to be made that's more brutal, and so there's less chance for experimenting with ideas, and there's less chance for, like I said, I also think broadcasters are over-analysing what their audience wants. So, you know, like I said, if something's brilliant, you can still get told, but we're not going to make it because it doesn't fit in with what our exact audience profile is. And I just think that's rubbish, basically. So that's pretty much it. But I mean, there's lots of detail. There's lot, you know. I think the jobs, the important jobs in television have been downgraded slightly in commissioning terms. And it used to be that they were taken by people who had years of experience of producing. And now they've got years of experience of commissioning, which is really different because you understand script work, but what I understand is, okay, this script isn't perfect, but if you turn around and say we're making it in 6 weeks' time, that writer's level of ability to write goes up like by 90%.
I'm a terrible writer. I can't write. I've tried. It just doesn't happen. I'm very good at someone having an idea and then me giving my input to it and saying what I think doesn't work and what does work, but I'm the worst at dialogue ever, so I overwrite immensely, so no.
I'm not a writer at all. I believe you're born a writer or not, I really do, and I don't think that as many people who think they are. But I wouldn't dream of thinking I was a writer. I think it's extraordinarily difficult and extraordinarily specialised, and I'm full of admiration for real writers. But I can't work with a blank piece of page, but I can work brilliantly with just one line on that page.
Well, lucky for us that you can. That's been absolutely illuminating. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. And also, Nicola, thank you.